recording and just say, take it away, Tony.
Thank you, Graham. Take it away. I feel like I'm going to do some sort of magic act or spin on something. So how lovely to see you, and welcome to Coffee Buddies again. And as we explained yesterday, Graham and I some time ago bought a virtual Citroen pop-up coffee van, and we drive around virtual organizations putting coffee events up. And our goal really is, as one of our colleagues was saying, I think Alan was saying, is to bring serendipity to the meetings, the virtual meetings. And most of us know that somehow the world works for us, and the person we stand next to in the coffee queue is the person that maybe is either the gate to the next customer or is the next customer. And Coffee Buddies now has been going for some time. We've run many events, and our thesis is to inform, engage, and entertain. And we do that with various different things. And one of the keys to our success is we bring very interesting people in to talk to us. And today is one of those days where Eric is going to talk to us. And Eric, welcome to Coffee Buddies. And maybe you could just explain who you are, what you do, and where you are, which is very interesting.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. This is my first Coffee Buddies, hopefully first of many. I really look forward to the conversation. So my name is Eric Gifford. I have about 25 years, maybe a little more or less, in big pharma, right? So I started a little company, mid-sized pharma company called Parke-Davis, then made the journey to Pfizer, then to Merck, MSD, Boston, all East Coast. Then about 5 years ago, I was asked by the leadership at MSD to go to Singapore to start up a translational medicine research informatics team there. And I did that. I took on that challenge. I'd always wanted to see this part of the world. There's an amazing amount of good science going on in Asia, and I wanted to be part of that. So I moved to Singapore about 5 years ago. Beginning of this year, I took a step back and thought, you know, maybe it's time to do something else, and joined CDD, Collaborative Drug Discovery, and am working with them for about the past 6 months or so, trying to build up business in Asia, make people aware of the fine product they have that facilitates and enables collaboration, both internally and externally, all over the world.
Fantastic. And you describe yourself maybe as a sort of digital nomad, which partly is because the world has changed, and software and expertise like your own is making things more collaborative. Is that right, Eric?
Absolutely, right? I mean, the things that we could only dream of when we had machines, they were in big rooms, right? All our machines are computers to me, by the way, right? But our computers were in things called computer rooms, and we didn't go far from those computer rooms, right? We dial into a mainframe maybe. But now today we have as much power in our laptop, maybe even in our cell phone, as we did back then, which enables me to work, you know, or you, anyone, just about anywhere in the world, and have access to an amazing amount of compute power right at our fingertips on a fairly low-powered desktop machine.
Yeah, and I think this is a topic that is very much at the forefront of all of our minds. So you've got a couple of slides, Eric, which maybe, Graham, you could help facilitate Eric getting them on the screen.
Yeah, I can see.
Oh, that's great. So I'm intrigued, you know, by firstly your behind you, Eric, you say complexity simplified. So maybe we could just start with that, because I think it is a incredibly complex world, but maybe you could help us why that word is there, or those words are there.
Yeah, I think, you know, in terms of informatics, we've gone through a real transformation, as they say, a digital transformation, where we're trying to democratize data, right? We're trying to get data into the hands of the scientists and enable them to make decisions, very impactful decisions on the data that they have. Well, in order to do that, you really don't want complex solutions that take an expert, right, or an IT team of, you know, hundreds of people, 20 people or whatnot. What we've got here with CDD Vault is a very intuitive system, a software as a service system online. It's a complete informatics platform that allows project teams to collaborate across the world, right? And so in that sense, we're taking the complex of the informatics and drug discovery and simplifying it and making it accessible to most people in their laboratories.
Fantastic. And why is that important? That's where your first slides really come in, Eric.
Yeah, and we can talk a little bit about this. And it's interesting, as I was looking, that's just before we came on here, 1998, right? That's a banner year. That's actually when I started, I'll say, a full-time job in the pharma industry, and it was downhill from them, right? Then into the 2000s, and we're spending a lot of money on research and development, not getting a lot back out of it. Well, around about 2007, 8, 9, we start to see an increase, and we're climbing out of that valley, I think. And I think a lot of that has to do with how we're, this is one person's opinion, how we're starting to use the data that we generate, right? And make use of all the information, reuse it, right? There's a term called FAIR, right? Findable, accessible, interoperable, reproducible. We are using that data in ways that we have never used before, right? And so I think that will help us climb out of that valley. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that's really interesting. So moving on to the next slide.
Yeah, and so that's the financial bit. But what really interested me the most, having spent the majority, actually all of my career in large pharma, was how much we relied on biotechs, startups. We relied on academic collaborations. Right, and I thought to myself, well, what's it look like? What's the environment look like? And I ran across this U.S. Congressional Budget Office report, April 2021, had some pretty interesting figures. Right, they've done this thing. Small drug companies now account for more than 70% of the nearly 3,000 drugs in phase 3 clinical trials. Right, 1/3 of new drugs approved by Food FDA have been developed by pharmaceutical firms with annual revenues less than 100 million. So those figures right there tell you that biotechs are extremely important to the biopharma, the pharmaceutical industry, research and development ecosystem. But what the third bullet point really tells you is they can't do it alone, right? They really need the so-called deep pockets, right, and the expertise to push it over the goal line, right? And so that's where the large drug companies come in. What they really do great is they still account for more than half the new drugs approved since 2009, and even greater share of revenues. But, and here's the but, only about 20% of those drugs currently in phase 3 trials were initiated in those laboratories. So I had struggled many years within big pharma doing a couple things. One was with the business development licensing team trying to identify new opportunities. And then once we would find a new opportunity, how did we get at the data, right? How did we really understand what the biotech was promising to deliver to us? And could we see the data and could we work with the data? And that's one of the things that drew me to CDD, Collaborative Drug Discovery, is they actually have a system.
Is that Eric, from a due diligence point of view, or from, it's a bit like I need to have a check out what they've got? Or is it from a working together kind of way?
It is both, right? So if and we all know that these compounds come into big pharma and from many directions, right? But I think there's basically two: you in-license, right, or you partner, or you acquire, right? And acquiring can be you acquire the compound or you acquire the company. At the end of the day, you still have that compound. But there's a whole nother area, which is this collaboration aspect. And I think that's where CDD really shines, is it enables the company within big pharma to reach out to the biotechs. I think there's another thing, even within the biotech community, biotechs aren't usually self-contained. We rely a lot on contract research organizations, CROs, to do some of the screening, some of the, supplement those capabilities that they don't want to bring internal. And that's where CDD pulls all that data together, puts it into a single source of truth for the project team, and open and free access in that project team to all the relevant data, right? So that's one aspect of it.
And can CDD Vault be used on a project? So rather than doing it, across pharma into biotech, you just do it across, you just use that software to manage a project internally.
Incredibly flexible, and yes, absolutely, right? And so from the beginning, the vault system, one of the strengths of this was this notion of the project, right? So the data is stored in your own vault. Once you own that vault, you can open up and share that data with whatever collaborator you would like, down to the individual level, right? Down to the role-based permissions to see, edit, add, register, all those things, right? So you can do that within a project just in your company, or you can cross borders outside into the other parts of the company, other parts of the world. Yep.
And do just one question: do CEOs use this as a dashboard?
That is a possibility. I think the primary use for this tool is for the research scientists, but we do have a visualization tool available within the platform wherein you can do a query, a real-time query of all the data available to you, bring it back and provide a visualization in a variety of different ways that you can set up on your own and explore that type of data. So I think there are multiple levels there. We also have ways to have reports generated from that data based on those queries. Interesting.
Thank you. Next slide.
Yeah, next slide. So again, and I don't want to belabor the point here, but I think one of the things that comes clear is that the biotech community is incredibly important to large pharma, and this is just in numbers ranked based on the size of the pipeline, the number of drugs in the pipeline 2020 and 2019, and the number of those drugs in 2020 that were actually originated in-house, right? And we'll see that hovers, plus or minus 50% depending on. I think it's interesting. I was talking to one of my colleagues earlier this morning, and maybe there's some cultural, some geographical differences in companies and their propensity to in-source, out-license, acquire drugs, or whether they do some internal development. But I really don't want to speculate too much on that. So that's the problem. And then one of the things that we like to think about is, in all these collaborations, what are the challenges that people face, that teams face with those collaborations, right? And some of the key issues that often arise in these conversations are their infrastructure, their data, right? Especially legacy systems, big monolithic systems that have been around for a long time, bolting things on and trying to understand where the data is. It's hard to exchange data. The data formats might be different even between departments, let alone outside the company. And again, you have so many systems, multiple systems. Last pharma company I was with, we actually did a big transformation working away from what we'll call project-based work to product or platform-based work, right? In the earlier days, we would spin up an IT project for every need, a bespoke solution to come along, and it got to be untenable. We could not support all of those bespoke solutions. So I think, the teams have seen now the power of the platform, if you will. Resources, most of these systems are costly to support, difficult to maintain, and vulnerable to evolving threats. We see with the CDD system a very cost-effective approach, software as a service. You really don't need a very large IT team to support this system, right? Usability, this is designed as a software as a service, web-based interface, incredibly easy to use, and like I said before, it democratizes data access. It puts the data in the hands of the scientists so they can design the next experiment based on the results that they've received, right? And then the main thing is collaboration. And this is, Tony, what you said, is it internal or external? It's yes, it can be between departments, let's say a chemistry and a biology team. It can be for internal versus external, right? Our big company and maybe our biotechs or our CROs, and then the confusing mix of tools. These are all challenges that are faced, and surprise, surprise, what I'll show you is that this tool can actually solve many of those challenges.
If you just expand a little bit, Eric, on the chemistry biology, because I've been in that battle for many years of my career. In what way can your solution help there?
Yeah, so a number of things. We're evolving into biologics, right? And so some of the proteins and peptides and ADCs, antibody drug conjugates, are part of this. We've got a snap gene integration, so you can actually become more biology aware, right? This was originally designed as a chemistry solution, and those tools are very mature. So think screening data, right? High throughput screening data, pharmacology data, ADME tox data, all of those endpoints can be handled in this system.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yes, so again, the vault itself, we've got a little screen capture of the system. As you can see, a very graphically oriented, visually pleasing. It's comprised of 4 different modules, if you will, right? One is an activity and registration module that allows you to store and organize your data, allows you to register your entities. And I use that word carefully, entities. It can be chemical compounds, it can be proteins, it can be peptides, it can be antibody drug conjugates, it can be mixtures. There's a wide variety of things, and it's really a flexible system for both registering and maintaining and organizing the data. Right. Once you have that data and then the entity is registered and you do some experiments on that, you document that in an electronic lab notebook, probably one of the simplest to use electronic lab notebooks that I've ever encountered. And everything is cross-linked from the data into that electronic laboratory notebook. You can also track your inventory. And then finally, once you have those experimental results, as I'd mentioned before, you can use a visualization, plot data sets, and mine them. And the critical thing is it's a hosted solution that you can access online from any browser, right? So I can access it here in the Philippines just as easily as I could in Boston.
No, it looks very good.
Yes, nice.
Next slide.
This is an established solution. The company was founded in 2004 as a spin-out of Lilly. And from its inception, it was very much focused on, as the name implies, collaborations. And as such, I'm showing probably 3 of the bigger external collaborations that are hosted on Vault. There are a number of other collaborations that we can't go into because of proprietary reasons in terms of companies, large and small pharma. But you'll see that the CDD Vault is at the center of some of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundations, the NIH Blueprint for Neuroscience Research, and IMI types of initiatives, with quite a few companies, all contributing to accessing, mining, and then making decisions on data that is hosted in the CDD Vault. And again, a wide range of types of institutes and sizes of institutes involved in these types of things.
Excellent.
Now I'll just, pretty much end with a quote here. One of Bob Volkman, who was a Pfizer colleague, gave us this nice reference. It's a very straightforward project-based collaboration, real-time data sharing, unlimited number of sites and users. And I really like this quote because it demonstrates the international nature of the type of work that we're doing, right? So you can have, scientists spread out all over the world in different sites and all be able to access the data in one solution, in one source.
Brilliant, Eric, very much appreciate that. Let's bring the slides off and back into the room. And then I'm going to take 3 questions, if I can, from the audience before we move into the smaller groups where you can ask Eric any more detail. But questions from the larger floor. Anything particular that
just put your hand up if you've got a question.
Questions?
Oh, they're saving it for the rooms, it looks like.
Yeah.
Oh, we got one from Don. Hi, Don. It's great to see you.
Hi, guys. And because I'm talking, I have to promote Tony's book.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Don. And then you're going to do your needle free.
No, I'm not. No, I'm good.
That's
I'm good.
my book.
Everybody's seen my needle.
Yeah, but we like to see it again.
Nobody's seen my needle, actually. No, actually. So my question for Eric is, so Eric, when you say vault, it kind of brings me back to the old share vault days. But in that case, and on that same line, as I develop a new technology and I put all this data in there, is this then something I can allow people access to for a limited period of time? Say they're in a CDA with me, is that kind of the access, besides access for me and my team, but I can share that out?
Absolutely, and that's the value of the system, is you can turn on and off access to whoever you like, right? Be it internal, and it is actually down to the individual. Now you have some group controls in there as well, but it could be down to the individual level, right? And I have actually seen the vault used, yes, for internal project teams, internal, external project teams, but we can also use it for what's called a data room, right? So let's say you're trying to spin out your compound and you want to share it with Big Pharma X. You can actually prepare that data, segregate that data, and provide access to your whoever it is that you're trying to, spin that compound out to, and they can see all the data underneath. Well, they see all that you allow them to see. But I think that saves a lot of time and certainly saves a lot of effort and some exercises that I've been involved in the past with mailing spreadsheets or opening up shared drives and dumping all the data in a various spreadsheet and say, well, what's the data for this endpoint? And you can't quite remember what spreadsheet you put that data in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Interesting.
Right.
Because of the time, I think we're going to firstly thank Eric in our traditional way, which is clapping, and then we're going to move into. Thanks a lot, Eric. Really interesting. I think this idea of how much data companies hold must be overwhelming. I mean, if you just think of the amount of clinical trial data in any pharma company, just must be mind-blowing. And having transparency and access across multiple sites is brilliant. So let me just ask Graham. Graham now does something magical. We've been seeing this over the years, where he moves people into a room. Yesterday he forgot how to do it, but today I think he's much more on the ball.
No, it was Zoom. They changed their
there's always an excuse,
dashboard.
Graham.
But yeah, if I basically if you accept the rooms I allocate you to, and then enjoy your networking from there, I might move you around when you're in there, but don't worry about that. Okay, enjoy your networking.